Hi guys, FreDDie here. It is Tuesday, March 5th. Let's talk about the Bahrain Grand Prix. It's FreDDie's pathetic picks for Formula One. We'll start with a quick summary of what happened down in Bahrain last weekend, and then we'll talk about Saudi Arabia, rumors and news, and what's going on. I mean, the silly season has already started kicking off anyway here. So, with Bahrain, Max, with nobody's surprise, took about a 20-second victory over second place Sergio Perez, Checo, in a Red Bull. Okay, not a whole lot of surprise there. Max was on the pole. Sergio started 5th. When you consider how he did, most of that 20 seconds difference was probably in the first 2 or 3 laps where Max got away and Sergio had to fight his way through the field. I haven't compared their individual lap times throughout the race, but I'm pretty sure they were pretty close, although I believe Max was a 10th or so faster almost every lap that mattered. He went flag to flag. He won the pole, he won the race, and he led every lap. Pretty dominant for Red Bull with a 1-2 finish. Surprisingly, not for me, but for many, Carlos Sainz came in 3rd in a Ferrari, beating his teammate Charles Leclerc, who came in 4th. Now, what I find interesting about that is, you know, Leclerc is Ferrari's golden boy, and they put all their money behind Leclerc, and he is the one that they are keeping, who's going to be a, he's going to be a teammate for Lewis Hamilton next year. And Sainz has nothing to prove, again, and he goes out and he proves what a great Grand Prix driver he is. He took Ferrari, probably, even after preseason testing, the consensus number 2 team in terms of performance, and took that car and drove it well. Now, Leclerc had brake problems that may have kept him from competing more, so you've got to give him that, but the key to any performance, and Max will tell you, is you got to be fast, and you got to have reliability, and you got to have a car that works right. And Sainz's cars obviously worked right, and Leclerc's didn't. So, but Leclerc did come back with a 4th place finish, followed by Lewis Hamilton, who I actually bet might actually be a surprise winner of this race. And I think the only reason I did that was like a $10 bet was going to pay me like $120. So, you know, I lost money on that deal. But I will bet again, and we'll see what happens. Here we go. So you had Lewis Hamilton. George Russell came in 5th. Lando Norris 6th. Hamilton, Oscar Piastri in the first or the second McLaren, and then Fernando Alonso, last year's 3rd place winner, came in 9th place in the Aston Martin. And nicely, Lance Stroll, after a first turn incident with Nico Hülkenberg, that was just a racing deal, really wasn't anything other than that, came back and drove very well and came up to a 10th place finish and got himself a point. I voted him my driver of the day because I thought that was probably the best the best performance of any driver. Sorry. And but somebody else got it, and I'm trying to remember who it was, and I think it was Carlos Sainz, if I remember. Anyway, other surprising things. Joe Granu in the stake was 11th, just out of the points. The Haas of Kevin Magnussen, 12th place finish. Not bad considering Haas had 0 expectations for this race. I mean, they thought they were going to probably be 19th and 20th. Nico got in that first lap incident. He ran into Stroll. I don't think it was his fault. I just think, again, it was one of his racing deals, but it probably pretty much just ruined Nico's race. He had to go in and put a new wing on and everything, and he finished back in 16th. The interesting thing about Bahrain was last year Alpine was way up there. I mean, they were like 3rd best in Bahrain last year. And, wow, this year they're just terrible. And I wish them well. for a couple of reasons. I like Ryan Reynolds a lot. What he and Rob McElhaney have done with Wrexham is really one of the best shows on FX. And that football club over there in Scotland. And so I enjoy the stuff he's done. He's bought into that team. And I actually sent him a note. I said, maybe you ought to sell your team to Andretti Motorsports. But we'll get more back to that. Because Alpine, I mean, their technical director, their lead aerodynamicist, everybody on after the race quit. So there is some issues at home. There is something rotten in Denmark at Alpine. And it wasn't getting rid of their team principal from last year that was going to solve a lot of things. Matter of fact, they probably ought to go back and get him back. He was a pretty smart guy. Valtteri Bottas had a bad race because he got into contretemps also. Logan Sargent doing fine, just trying to run his race. Steering wheel on the Williams, they had to replace it once. He had a problem. He's cruising down the road and he loses all power, and it's the steering wheel. It had nothing to do with his talent. And it took him about 50 seconds to get the thing reconfigured, get the car back on the track, and off he went. But unfortunately, the damage done. He ends up 20th. Somebody has to. I really hope Logan Sargent has a better year this year than last year. I think he will. I think he's as talented as many of those other drivers. I think he gets a lot of grief because he is an American driver. Okay, so with Bahrain, again, just to recap, Sergio won. Okay, top 10. Now, teams, top 10, Red Bull, 1 and 2. Last year, it was Red Bull 1 and 2, Aston Martin, Mercedes 4-5, Ferrari 6-7. This year, Bahrain, Red Bull 1 and 2, Ferrari 3 and 4, Mercedes, McLaren. So they're pretty close. So if you're looking at how teams are going after first race, you really can't say a whole lot. But your top tier teams are probably Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren right now. Then Aston Martin is probably the top of the midfield. And then you have some bottom feeders. And I hate to say this, that Aston Martin might be the top of the midfield, and there might not be anybody else in the midfield. But surprisingly, it could be Sauber. Sauber could be in the midfield because Joe Granu did so well. And Haas did better. But your bottom teams are definitely right now Williams and Alpine. And Alpine's got to get off the bottom. Williams is actually on the rise, I think. They might be on the ascension. They found some things. And I think one of the things they'll have is Logan Sargent in his second year of going. All right, so let's go to the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. And let's talk about rumors this week. And let me get some of my notes out. Here we go. So, first rumor that I'm hearing, Max to Mercedes. Why? Because Jos Verstappen was seen talking to Toto Wolff for a couple hours after the race. Now, they all know each other. They're all friends and acquaintances, if nothing else. So you're going to talk. But that could be a substantially good rumor. It just depends on Max's contract with Red Bull. So I will tell you this. As long as Red Bull continues to put Max in the fastest car, that's where Max wants to be. That's where every driver wants to be. They want to be in the fastest car. They don't really care about the politics. But having said that, Jos Verstappen, who I used to respect as a driver, even though he's a backmarker, but I for some reason I liked him. He's killing Max's future. He reminds me of Richard Williams back in the 80s when Serena Williams and Venus Williams first started playing tennis. So they first started playing tennis, and Richard Williams was their handler. He made them what they were. I'll give him credit for developing two of the greatest athletes, male or female, in the world, in Serena and Venus Williams. When they got on the tennis tour, they were just happy to be there. They were so excited. They were young. They hadn't been there in that limelight, and they were just happy to be part of the limelight. And then about the second year they got into the limelight or whatever, they took on this air of entitlement, like they deserved to be there, which athletically they probably did, but they used their entitlement, and they used their, I hate to say this, they used their race to shield themselves from this entitlement, and they said, well, we deserve this because, not because we're great athletes, but because our dad raised us up, and it was just, I hate to say that they kind of were kind of racist themselves. But today they're two of the greatest, most wonderful ladies in tennis. They got rid of their dad they matured. And once they matured and they realized that there are other good tennis players and people, nobody was out to get them. They wished them well. It didn't matter what color you were or whatever. Those two are probably two of the nicest, most gracious professional athletes you'll ever meet, the Williams sisters. Max is in that entitlement phase right now. Not so much Max, but Yas. He feels he's entitled. He feels he could run the team, and he was trying to run Christian Horner off. Christian Horner, last week, as you know, had charges levied against him. They found there was no foundation or whatever, and they went on. But Yas continues to bring that up. So he's the one who's throwing the wrench in the works, and I don't know why. And Yas is the one that's really the spoiled child here, not Max. Max just wants to race cars. He wants to race the fastest car, and he wants to beat everybody. Max is going to do that. But Yas, apparently that's not good enough for him. And here's a guy who was a back marker in Formula One for years, and apparently drove Max not unlike how Richard Williams drove Venus. So here's what my prediction is. Red Bull may say, you're not even welcome in the pits anymore. Now, he's not going to be here in Saudi, I understand, but he may not be allowed in the Red Bull garage anymore. If I were Christian Horner, I'd say, Max, love having you. Your dad's got to go. And I think Max would mature more and become... I think Max is one of the nicest guys out there, but he kind of comes across as very... his focus makes him come across as aloof. And I don't think he is that aloof. I think he's a fun-loving guy, just like the rest of the guys. He just happens to be insanely talented. All right. I think Mohammed bin Salim, who is now under investigation, and the FIA, he needs to go. Since he has been the head, the only thing that he's done that I could say I quote approve of or whatever, not that I disapprove, well, there's a lot of things, but anyway, I like the idea that he wanted Andretti Motorsports to come into F1, and he said there's room for an 11th team, but the Formula One owners don't want an 11th team. So they didn't say they don't want Andretti, they just don't want another team. And I think that is enough right there. I think Mohammed bin Salam, if he is, there's something interesting, like if you're watching this Fannie Willis case in Atlanta, it's the look of impropriety, not the impropriety itself, but the hint of it that's probably going to get her disqualified and maybe eliminate that case. You have to be above the fray, and you are the chief of the FIA. He's putting himself into the fray, and he's manipulating races and racetracks and stuff. And the only reason, and I can only think he's doing it for power and money, and for his own self-aggrandizement. So he's not helping the sport. So maybe it's time for the Formula One owners. I believe they're a strong enough body to find either another, quote, sanctioning body or sanction their Formula One races themselves. They've got enough money, time, effort, and intelligence to do it. And they can run their own show, and I don't know that you need the FIA there. You may have to change the name from Formula One if the FIA owns that. But actually, I believe Liberty Media owns that. So Liberty Media itself could actually become the, quote, sanctioning body for the FIA. And if they are in Formula One, they can adopt any rules they want And if they want to mirror what the FIA rules are for in terms of super licensing and all that, they can do that. I want you to know that as your humble servant, Formula One owners, I, FreDDie, will be happy to come and head up that effort for you for a small fee. But what do you get? You get a guy who loves Formula One sitting in Florida in his living room telling you to hire. That's what you're getting. All right. So, anyway, lots of other rumors. Max to Mercedes, who's going there, who's going where. Tony says, look, I got a whole season to figure out who I'm going to put in here. I got to develop the car. I got to make my car want to be, everybody would love to be Mercedes because they are Mercedes-Benz. But the other thing is drivers want to be in a competitive car. Okay, who sucked at Bahrain? I don't know what the hell happened with V-Carb and the little mini Red Bull team, but they've got to show a much better improvement, especially with their race strategies this time and their communication. So I will not be picking them as part of my pathetic picks for the top 3. So now it's time for FreDDie's pathetic picks for Saudi Arabia. Now, we're talking the third longest race, one of the longest racetracks. It's 3.86 kilometers, or 6.17 kilometers, 3.8 miles, which is about the same length as the former Daytona road course before they cut it off to build the motorhome park for the drivers there. So the original Daytona road course was 3.83 miles. This is a street circuit in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, I believe on the Red Sea. The best street racer probably there in the best car, so car racer, is Checo. Checo had the pole last year, won the race last year. I think you'll see him do very well again this year. So he likes street courses, and most of his wins are on street courses. So last year, I think we had Sergio won, and then Max was second, and then Fernando Alonso came in third. So it was Red Bull, and then Aston Martin, Mercedes, Ferrari last year. And Sainz was in front again last year. The last year, 9 and 10 were the 2 Alpine cars. So you know they're not going to be there this year. They got to shed weight, get some aerodynamics right, and even get their powertrain right. And they're a powertrain supplier. So they're deep. Anyway, okay, so Bahrain is done. Saudi Arabia is coming up. So who is going to be favorite? Well, Max is going to be a favorite. Red Bull as a team is going to be favorite. Ferrari's number 2. Mercedes is probably number 3. Okay? And then you have McLaren. And McLaren last year was just terrible. Remember the first several races. But they came out of the box pretty well. And they've gotten themselves a couple of pretty good points this year. They both finished in the points, 5th and 7th or whatever. So good bless them for that. So here are my predictions for the top 3 in Saudi Arabia. Okay, I think Max will probably not start on pole. I give Sergio the pole, or maybe Leclerc. But I think Max, because he's so strong, is going to figure out a way to get in the lead. He may not win by 20 seconds, though. It might be a much more competitive race. I'm going to say that you might see Leclerc, if they get the brakes, in second, and Checo in third. So I go Max, Ferrari, Leclerc in second, and Checo in third. But Lewis will be there, Russell will be there. The top 10, you're going to have McLaren in the top 10. You're going to have a Mercedes in the top 10. Obviously Red Bull, Ferrari. And then you might have a sleeper in Haas or in Sauber, depending. But I will tell you that Williams will not get up into the top 10, although Alex Albon is a great driver, okay, and deserves to be maybe in Mercedes next year. And he still has a tie to Mercedes, and Williams gets their engines from Mercedes. So there's a lot of, kissing cousins stuff going on there. The Alpines are going to be probably in the backfield. They've started off on, to quote, the back foot, as the Europeans like to say. Haas is going to be, in the teens. they're going to be, 12, 13. I do believe Nico, though, will have another good qualifying thing. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. FreDDie B's pathetic picks for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Call your bookie, call your bank, take them to the bank. Don't rely on me for your bets. Anyway, if you like this, go ahead and subscribe. It'd be great to have you with us. I'll give you more insights on Formula One, also NASCAR. I'm going to tell you what they need to do to fix it. I'm still working on that because I want to be right when I tell them, because those boys at NASCAR really need some help. But have a great day. We'll talk to you later. Ta-ta for now.